Hello everyone and welcome to STEMfest 2015. My name is Bradley Layton and I'm a professor at the University of Montana where I direct the Energy Technology program. Before we get started, I want to thank you for spending time with me, Governor Bullock, and the fine folks at the Inspired Classroom and an organization known as We Are Montana in the Classroom, who place University of Montana faculty members, graduate students, and professionals in K-12 classrooms statewide to inspire them about higher education and career pathways. Today, with the technology provided by VisionNet, we are able to fulfill this mission. This event is part of a national initiative called STEM Career Accelerator Day, being hosted by STEM Connector. You can find more about their organization at stemconnector.org. My first connection with STEM Connector came through as a result of a National Science Foundation grant I received through their Advanced Technology Education Division to enhance the educational opportunities for my energy technology students, a few of whom you see behind me, to strengthen our relationship with the Blackfeet Community College, to build connections with renewable energy technology companies, and to build connections with high school students around Montana and across the United States. You probably already know this, but the presentation you're about to take part in is a minds-on activity. So get comfortable in your seat, take a deep breath, and get ready to meet and interact with some of Montana's leaders in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Now, I'll hand it over to Governor Bullock, who would like to share with you his vision for the future of STEM education in Big Sky Country.
Hi everyone, I'm Governor Steve Bullock, and I'd like to thank you for being a part of the first ever Montana STEMfest and showing an interest in a career in the fields of science, technology, engineering, and math. These are some of the fastest growing career fields in the nation. In fact, over the next decade, Montana is expected to need more than 2,000 new workers a year with skills specific to these fields. And these are good paying jobs in careers such as engineering, research and technology, architecture, and health sciences. I've been working hard to ensure that students like you have access and support to succeed, which is why we've created the Governor's STEM Scholarship Program to provide financial aid to students pursuing one of these careers. We've also launched the Montana STEM Mentors Initiative to encourage more girls to pursue a career in these fields. You all will determine what the future of Montana looks like, and your participation today means that we will have a bright one. Thanks so much for being here and have a great time.
We are going to do very briefly a couple of introductions, and so I'm going to start with Michaela and Francis, and I would like you both to introduce yourselves, say one great thing about where you live, and how STEM plays a role in your life. Let's go ahead and start with you, Michaela.
All right. I'm Michaela Davenport. I am the Analytics Manager at Blue Marble Biomaterials, and I was overjoyed that I was able to find a job that uses my degrees in biochemistry and cell molecular biology, where I can work in Montana that is so beautiful and full of so many wonderful people that are just so nice.
Yeah, and I am Franny Gillman, so I'm currently working on my PhD at the University of Montana in microbial ecology, but I also work part-time for Michaela at Blue Marble Biomaterials. So it's, again, just like Michaela, it's really exciting that I'm actually utilizing my degree for my career. And yeah, so we're from Missoula, and I think just one of the great things about Missoula is that it's a wonderful community, and the recreation and all of our free time is there to be had and enjoyed, and yeah.
All right, so as I said, I'm the Analytics Manager over at Blue Marble Biomaterials. I graduated from University of Montana with degrees in biochemistry and cell molecular biology. I was lucky enough to find Blue Marble. I just cold called them one day and said, hey, I want to work for you. And so I started out working as an intern, and I've slowly grown from there. But the cool thing about Blue Marble is that it has a very wide array of applications of STEM. So the first thing is that we have to think of what is the point of business? Can anybody think of why you would want to start a business? and what is needed for a business to be successful.
Sentinel, what do you think? Why do you want to start a business?
What's the point?
To make that shit.
All right, there we go. Thank you. Make money. And so the great thing about Blue Marble is that it started out looking at things that could be used and what was already in the marketplace. So when we're looking at what's already in the marketplace, there's oil that fills a huge portion of the marketplace. It covers not only our fuels for our cars and other forms of transportation, but it also is a big part of our flavors and fragrances industry, where Blue Marble started out in the fuels industry with algae, but a lot of the materials that are used in the fuels are also very closely related to what is used in the flavors and fragrances industry. And they're worth much, much more. I'll step out of the way. And you can see oils are around just in, a couple bucks per gallon, but for a lot of flavors and fragrances, it can be several $1,000s per kilo. And so that is what brings us into a world that can be profitable for a business and allow us to look into other areas where the business can expand and grow. So another example of something that is used in the flavors and fragrances industry that Blue Marble can make is ethyl butyrate. That is used in like juicy fruit gum or other like fruity sweet flavors, and traditionally it is made by oil, but we can use it using biomass in a polyculture fermentation system. Makes the exact same molecule, but it is sustainably made, as well as taking waste out of landfills to make the exact same product. And just as kind of a background of Blue Marble, the mission behind Blue Marble is to sustainably replace those petrochemical flavors and fragrances. And that's our facility right here in Missoula, Montana. We're out by the airport. To go over the technology in Blue Marble, like I said, we use a polyculture fermentation system. We work with large food manufacturers to take their waste products and turn that into usable products that are cycled back into the industry. For example, on a previous slide there were coffee grounds, but we've also worked with like the forestry industry to take, beetle kill, or we've worked with microbrewers or even the large brewers like Anheuser-Busch to take their spent brewer's mash, and we put that through a fermentation system and it produces alcohols, carboxylic acids, and esters. We pull those out and either purify those down to use them in their form, or we use those to react and make further, more complex compounds that are cycled back into the industry. And they are drop-in replacements. They are the exact same compounds as what are used by the oil industry. The thing that is needed is people coming into the workspace that are inspired and they can see where things can change. And so you need to think of what inspires you, what's interesting. Maybe polyculture and the smell of butyric acid, which is vomit, is not very inspiring to you. But looking at where problems can be solved using STEM and looking at ways to make it better and apply that to solving our societal issues.
Great, thank you, Allie. So I am, let me get situated here. So I'm currently a graduate student finishing up my PhD at the University of Montana. So I'm kind of going to tell you a little bit about microbiology at UMT and sort of how I got interested in that and how I ended up at Blue Marble. So that kind of developed from how the public sort of focuses on bad microorganisms, right? But the thing is, most bacteria aren't actually bad. A lot of them are good or not harmful at all, or we can utilize them for good, applicable purposes. So again, I am at the University of Montana, and so I'm in the Division of Biological Sciences, and that is home to 3 departments: CMMB, Cellular, Molecular, and Microbiology; OBE, Organismal Biology and Ecology; and last is Systems Ecology. So I'm in CMMB, Cellular, Molecular, and Microbial Biology, and that all 3 of these departments are pretty diverse, but even CMMB in itself is diverse, ranging from studying protein structure to more of studying microbial communities, which is what I do.
Just roll it.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. So again, microbiology in the public eye. So what makes something a microorganism is really just that you can't see it with the naked eye, right? You have to use a microscope to see it. So that includes viruses, bacteria, fungi, protozoa. So kind of getting into the good, the bad, and the ugly of these guys. So the bad and the ugly get a lot of attention, right? We usually think of microbes as sort of pathogenic or causing infections. Like we've got the flu virus, which is always a hot topic, or thinking of bad mold, we might think of bread mold or the black mold around our house. For bacterial infections, we think about strep throat, right? Streptococcus causing strep throat, or other strep species cause that gross flesh-eating bacterial lesion. And then what else you get? Or you might think about MRSA or staph infections, right? But really they're not all bad. Some of them might be pathogenic and cause infection, but some are good. Or some are more on like a gray scale, right? So moving from bad to the white end, more of like good bacteria, right? So let's think about some microbes that are used for good. So most commonly you can think of food production, so fermentations for beer or other products, or how blue marble uses fermentations to produce useful chemicals. Cheese, so a lot of dairy products rely on bacteria, right? So cheese, you need different streptococcal organisms for Swiss cheese. And yogurt, you really need bacteria, right? You've got lactobacillus and different streptococcus organisms used for yogurt production. And the one that sort of got me really motivated and hooked on microbiology is thinking about the microbes that are good in our body. So the microbes associated with us. So I kind of remember reading 2 papers in my undergrad career. One was showing that the microbes on your left hand are significantly different from the microbes on your right hand. And that sort of just blew my mind, that you could have a different community on one hand than on the other. And it started having me think about how our bodies are really an ecosystem, right? We've got bacteria all over our skin. We have mites in our eyebrows and eyelashes. And our guts are just loaded with bacteria. And the other study that got me interested in microbiology was one where they estimated so they kind of counted the total number of cells that make up our body. So just a count of cells. So they counted, human cells and bacterial cells that make up our body, and they found that about 90% of our cells that make us are actually bacterial. And that just blew my mind. So from that point on, I was hooked on microbiology. And then just another example sort of this gray scale. So what most people don't realize is that we all have E. coli in our stomachs. It's naturally there and doesn't harm us. But so this top picture is E. coli in the human gut. But if that E. coli gets introduced into your urethra, then you can get urinary tract infection. So in a different location, that organism turns into an infectious causing unit. And then other good bacteria, which we don't really think about, are very commonly found in the soil. So not as obvious good microbes, right? But these microbes are responsible for all nutrient cycling in the soil. So think about the carbon cycle, right? So those microbes are responsible for decomposition. So if we didn't have the fungus and bacteria in the soil, our plant would just get piled up with leaf litter and other plant debris, right? Another example is the nitrogen cycle. So we need those microbes in the soil to make nitrogen available to plants, right? So those plants need nitrogen to grow. So really without these organisms in the soil, our life wouldn't exist at all across the globe. And just a little factual tidbit. So just in a gram of soil, so in that hand there's about a gram of soil. There are more microbes in that gram than there are humans on this planet, just in that 1 gram. And more specifically, there's more than 1 billion bacteria in that same gram. So it's really pretty fascinating that diversity and just the total biomass of those organisms in the soil kind of started steering my career towards the direction of studying soil microorganisms. And another interesting fact is when you think about microbiologists, you think about us growing things in the lab, right, in flasks on petri dishes, but we really can only grow less than 1% of the bacteria that we find in the soil. So I've generally been using DNA, so I extract the DNA from the bacteria in the soil in order to figure out sort of who is there and then what they're doing. And so all those interests sort of have steered me to do research at the University of Montana with Dr. Bill Holden, my research advisor, and that ultimately led to my research in Greenland. So I'll talk briefly about that. So I was doing work in Zackenberg, Greenland, on the east side, and then Disco Island, as well as Kongerlussuaq, Greenland. We'd go there to get to the Greenland Ice Sheet. So you're probably aware that Greenland is sort of covered in an ice sheet, right? And then the exterior areas of Greenland have permafrost around them, so that's just frozen soil. So I've been studying that permafrost and frozen soil as well as the Greenland Ice Sheet. So just again quickly, so that frozen soil, as climate change progresses in the Arctic, it's been thawing out. So this top active layer right here, so that normally thaws every year, but as temperatures warm in the Arctic, it gets deeper and deeper every year. So if you think about this little flow chart above me, so if temperature's rising in the Arctic, we get more permafrost thaw, right? This is harder than it looks. And then as that permafrost thaws, you can imagine the bacteria in that soil is becoming more active. So, and think about, when we are actively breathing, we're breathing out carbon dioxide, right? Well, the bacteria are kind of doing the same thing. They breathe out carbon dioxide. They respire methane. So they're introducing all this greenhouse gas that might further accelerate climate change in the Arctic. And then just some fun pictures. So I'll step off to the side a bit. This is Zackenberg, Greenland. Some other scientists I was collaborating with collecting deep soil cores. And this is Disco, Greenland. It's fun to pretend like I'm actually there working again. And so we set up snow fences to vary the amount of snow in the field site, and little plexiglass chambers that warm the soil. And what else we have? More of Disco, Greenland. It's a very beautiful area. And on the other side of our field site is the ocean. And so you can see icebergs and whales while you're working. And then this is the Greenland Ice Sheet. And some scenic pictures. Myself and my advisor on the Greenland Ice Sheet. And then one area where we were sampling and collecting ice cores on Greenland on the ice sheet. So again, I just want to emphasize sort of why I fell in love with microbiology. It's really just the fact that these tiny organisms run the world. Without them, we wouldn't be alive. So I really enjoy studying these beneficial impacts of these organisms and the impacts they have around the globe. So from soil nutrient cycling to how can we apply the function of these organisms for good. And that's sort of how I ended up working with Michaela at Blue Marble Biomaterials. So how can we apply these organisms' functions to for applicable purposes in industry? I also enjoy the highly collaborative nature of microbial ecology. So both in my graduate work and at Blue Marble, I work with many different scientists, so geologists, hydrologists, biogeochemists, and engineers, and it's really fulfilling working in a community like that. And then again, just this combination of field work and lab work that I've had has been fantastic. I've been able to travel to places I never thought I'd ever go in order to investigate microbes in their natural environments. And then using sort of state-of-the-art sequencing technologies has also been really cool. And yeah, that's just why I love microbiology and why it's a great field to work in. Very applicable.
All right, well, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and take this. And now we're going to open it up. We're actually going to go ahead and do some questions right now. So I'm going to bring us all back on. Here we go. So you had an opportunity after Michaela, do you want to come on to go ahead and think about some of those questions with your classmates. Let's go ahead and start. Can we start with Columbia Falls to kick off the questions? Let's go over here.
Hi, I'm Annabelle, and I had a question for the Blue Marbles. You guys talked about how you made algae biofuels. What system did you use?
So it started out, it's a pretty crazy story, but it started out as a boat in the Puget Sound going around and collecting algal blooms and using those algae for the biofuels. But it turns out that jet fuel is very similar to blueberry flavoring, and it is worth a lot more as blueberry flavoring. So, yeah.
Excellent question. Thank you. Columbia, do you have any other questions?
You want to ask that? Sure. Are you familiar with the Omega system for algae biofuels?
Actually, I'm not.
Granny, are you familiar with that one?
I'm not. So extracting.
It was put on by NASA. It was a study. It was a study done.
Mine was, hold on, I heard, so if I'm having a blueberry flavored something, it could be from diesel fuel, is that correct?
A lot of compounds that are found in the flavors and fragrances industry are derived from oil products. But Blue Marble is working towards pulling those same exact ingredients out of food manufacturing waste, so like spent brewer's grain or whey products from cheese production. Those are all things that Blue Marble can use to make the same exact products.
Michaela, so you're saying that we don't have to eat diesel byproducts anymore, but we can actually eat food byproducts?
That's right.
That sounds like a plan. Sendel, do you have any other questions?
So recently there was like a big storm in Missoula and there was a bunch of trees and stuff that got all chipped up. Was it your group that used all those wood chips, or was it some other?
That was not us, but we can use the cellulosic biomass from wood in our same process. Because it's a polyculture, it can use a very wide variety of different feedstocks because all of the microbes in that environment kind of play off of each other to break down different types of feedstock, and we still get the same array of products at the end of the day.
Great question.
Okay, I'm Joe. So about the microorganisms, how much of a percentage is unknown and how much of a percentage is known that you know of?
That's a great question. And that does come into how I was talking about how less than 1% we can actually grow in the lab. So, I mean, there's a huge amount of unknown microorganisms, but because of the new sequencing technologies, we are able to at least identify who the bacteria might be. I can't give you an exact percentage of how much is unknown, but a large portion is still unknown. I can say that. Good question.
This is Big Sky.
Hi.
Is the microphone on?
Yep, we got you.
I have a question. As a math teacher of high school students, when a student is interested in a field of science, say microbiology or chemistry, how do they decide which program within the university system to go into within that department? And how do they get involved in some of the research projects that are happening in our area?
Yeah, good question. I think as far as undergrad research, I think both Michaela and I would say there's a lot of opportunity for undergraduate research at UMT. I think to start with, you would first contact faculty you might be interested in. So just always feel free to email faculty when you start a new university. As far as what track, Michaela might have more input there.
I would say just start out with what sounds interesting. Looking at what research different professors are doing at different universities, and if it sounds cool, then start taking the classes that will put you more into that field. And the more you learn about it, the more you'll find out about other opportunities, other research that's being done in that field, and you'll just start figuring out classes. Well, if I want to do research behind protein folding and how they get their shape, then I need to have the foundation that would build up on that. So you would need to have the biology, you would need to have a very solid math background to understand the kinetics and physics behind what makes a protein fold into its specific shape. But it's just a matter of finding something that sounds cool and talking to professors and saying, well, what do I need to be where you're at?
I want to jump in with a really quick question, Michaela. Does Blue Marble ever do internships with...
We do.
You do? Would you tell us about that? Because that seems like another way that as a student, especially when you're in college, you could sort of figure out if this is the track that I want to be on. Would you tell us a little bit about that?
So we do have internships. I actually started out as an intern, and it's really interesting because I did research at the university level after I finished up my undergraduate degree, and academia is very different from industry. Like I said at the beginning of the presentation, the point of industry is to make money, and so you have to make sure that what you're doing in your job not only is interesting because you want to love doing your job, but it also needs to bring in revenue. And so it needs to be profitable. You need to be able to do things as efficiently as possible. And so getting the exposure to what industry is compared to what I had experienced in the lab of where it was more just like science for the sake of science, and it was so much fun. But this is also fun because you get to do the research behind how do I make this as efficient and effective as possible and get those yields up. And so when we have students come in for internships, it's getting their exposure to everything that Blue Marble has to offer. So working on both like the R&D scale of just trying new things of, well, what could we possibly make that makes money, to working on the large scale with process efficiency improvements and doing the research behind what really is going on in there and what other possible products we pull out. But we have a wide range of interns roll through, and they can help in every facet of the company. And they're generally like 3 months long, and we work with students to get credit, like research credit for their undergraduates. And a lot of times it's a project that the intern wants to do. So we have kind of like a suggested list, but they spend a couple of weeks getting their feet wet and they choose something that sounds interesting to them that they do research on while they're there at Blue Marble getting experience in everything else.
Thank you. Let's see. How are we doing on questions? If you, so we've kind of gone to each of the schools. If you could raise your hand. Oh, there we go. Columbia Falls. Go for it.
I'm Ben, and I would like to ask, so you said that blueberry flavoring was a lot similar to jet fuel. And you guys said that you guys were taking that off of the shelves. How are you guys planning to do that?
So that is a conversation with like our marketing team and going and saying, you know what, we have this exact same compound. It does not fluctuate with the cost of oil. It is made sustainably. It is natural, so it can carry the natural label under like the FDA labeling laws and the European labeling laws. And that's a pretty big buzzword. So there's a lot of marketing that goes into that of our business team going in and saying, hey, we have something that you already use. It's made naturally sustainable and it is not from oil, so it doesn't fluctuate with the cost of oil, and that's something that is a selling point for your product. So you should buy from us.
Hi, my name's Ashley. I just had a question about as far as what is Missoula's wildlife biology and their science programs up at MS. I mean, few of them, and how do you like it, and what's the field, going out in the field like versus like the lab work?
Sure. Yeah, and so we both have been at the University of Montana, and so you're wondering about the wildlife program. The wildlife program is one of the best at UMT, one of the best in the nations. And as far as just being a student at the university, it's a nice atmosphere. And again, one of the things I like, so the wildlife program is actually in a separate department, but what's great about the University of Montana is that there's a lot of collaboration. So within the Division of Biological Sciences that I was in, we would often collaborate with the chemistry or biochemistry department that Michaela was affiliated with, or with the wildlife. So for example, there's a grad student in my lab that is a joint grad student between the wildlife program and the microbiology program. And so he's studying bacteria associated with elk. But as far as doing lab work and field work, they both have their pluses and minuses. And I've really enjoyed doing both. It's obviously fun to be out somewhere beautiful and collecting samples somewhere aesthetically pleasing. But you need to be able to work efficiently in the field and think on your feet really quickly, which are good skills to have in the lab as well. And lab work can be fun. I think for me the fun part of lab work is really working with this the DNA sequencing. It's just sort of a new technique that's really advancing quickly, so it's fun to feel like you're on the frontier of technology. But do you have anything to add about the university?
Well, with the university, I never actually did any field work. I was very much in the lab, but it was great, just the collaborative atmosphere of the labs. You know, if one lab has some instrumentation that you need, it was very open. I'm just like, oh yeah, sure, come on over. We're not using it on Tuesday, so it's all yours. But, you know, you get to learn about so much more because you're just mixing with all of the other departments and seeing what they're up to, and it really expands your horizons.
Yeah. It's a great environment.
Thank you, Bozeman. Thank you for that question. Well, let's go ahead and thank Michaela and Franny for being here with us today. And I want to thank you as well for joining us for STEMfest.
Yeah.